So it's still a little early in the morning for some of us. So I thought we could start things off with a little Bible studies quiz. Category Genesis. So you can think about that. Last week, Sunny and Diane told the story of God's first covenant with creation. God gives humans dominion over all of the animals. And Diane talked a little bit about what dominion means. It doesn't mean rule over. It's our duty to care for all of God's creation, to steward it. And we ended our story on the sixth day of creation. God looks around at his creation, and what does he say? It was good. The same thing that God says throughout Genesis 1 whenever God is looking at a new creation. He saw that it was good, and that's the end of chapter 1 of Genesis, end chapter 1. Who knows what happens in chapter 2? Yeah? So this is after land, and what we're doing at this point, good though, that's a little bit earlier. We're zeroing in on humans, and we hear about a couple of specific humans. That's right. In chapter 2, things are still going pretty well. Actually, in chapter 2 of Genesis, we get the seventh day. God takes a well-deserved break. And then we get this retelling of creation and introduction to Adam and Eve. Chapter 3, the snake, exactly. The fall of humanity already by chapter 3 of the first book of the Bible. Great. Chapter 4. Well, yes, so they banished from the garden, and then Adam and Eve have a couple of kids, right? Cain and Abel, so just another great upper. Then we have chapter 5, and I'll give you this one. I had totally forgotten. Anyone know it? You get bonus points. It's the generations of Abel, so you kind of go through all of these people who lived for 600 years, 900 years. I don't know what vitamins they were taking back then, but I tell you all of this, we kind of go through the fall and Cain and Abel to understand why, by the time Sunny's sitting here 1 week later telling the story of Noah, things have gone so wrong. So chapter 6 opens up, and the Lord is in a very different place from seeing it was good. The Lord saw that the wickedness of humankind was great in the earth, and that every inclination of the thoughts of their hearts was only evil continually. And the Lord was sorry that he had made humankind on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So the Lord said, I will blot out from the earth the human beings I have created, people together with animals and creeping things and birds of the air, for I am sorry that I have made them. We know where this is heading. God's attitude for his creation has taken a 180-degree turn. The pride he was feeling has turned to regret. Over thousands of years, he has watched as the creatures he made, the guardians, the stewards we were talking about last week of his creation, kill and betray each other and the earth and God. Sometimes it's really hard for me to empathize with God. Jesus, sure, that guy seems very real to me, but God often feels very distant. But in this story, I know I must be made in God's image, because last December I was making donuts, and this isn't something I do that often, and it was kind of a disaster from the start. I didn't have yeast. I had to go to the grocery store a couple of times. Then I had to look around for my dough hook, and I couldn't find it. So I decided, that's okay. I know the little mixy thing's not going to work, so I'm going to make the dough in my blender, my multi-bladed blender. And I'm just going to say what you're all thinking. No, I'm not talented in the kitchen, and I own that. But I decided, this is going to work. Obviously, about 90 seconds into this experiment, donut dough is pretty sticky, so the motor just dies in my blender, and the kitchen is filled with the smell of burning rubber. And donut dough is really thick and sticky, and I have one of these blenders where you like stick the blades in. It's called a Ninja. I got it as a wedding present. But it means that when I go to try to clean up this mess and salvage what I can of my blender, I like can't actually pull the blades back out without yanking on them, without like really getting a handle on them. And they're really sharp, so that's very dangerous. And so just in a fit of rage, I throw the entire blender in the trash can. So let's ignore for a minute that this is not the responsible waste sorting and removal process that we should be doing to work towards a future for our planet. But that impulse, maybe you have a similar story of working on a creation and becoming so frustrated and disgusted and filled with regret that you just want to crumple it into a little ball and throw it in the trash can. In Genesis 6, that's where God is. Reading the story as an adult, the flood seems to me to be a story about God's profound disillusionment with her creation, meant to directly parallel the sense of pride she feels at the beginning of everything. So what does God do when she gets to this point? When her kitchen is filled with the smell of burning rubber and she's sorry that she ever started this ill-advised project? She sends a flood. She throws the whole damn thing out. But we know that she spared one man and his family, Noah. So we know this story. Noah builds an ark. God sends the rain. Everything left on earth dies in a terrifying apocalyptic weather event, not unlike some of the weather events that climate scientists are warning us about these days. But Noah and Noah's family survive. And we get to the end of chapter 7, beginning of chapter 8. We're going through the whole book of Genesis. Then Noah built an altar to the Lord and offered burnt offerings. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing odor, the Lord said in his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of humankind, even though the inclination of the human heart is evil. Nor will I ever again destroy every living creature as I have done. And God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. The fear and dread of you shall rest on every animal of the earth, and on every bird of the air, and on everything that creeps on the ground, and on all the fish of the sea. Into your hand they are delivered. What a different relationship this is from last Sundays, right? These parallel stories of God's creation. Again, we have the very beginnings of life on the planet, just a handful of humans and creatures. It's a brand new day for the world. But how different is the relationship between humans and the rest of creation from what it was on that innocent sixth day of the Dominion Covenant? In Genesis 1, we were loving caretakers, and by Genesis 7, the fear and dread of us will be instilled in the heart of every animal. I think it's more pleasant to talk about the early covenant, where we live in harmony with animals, creeping things, plants, and the like. But I'm telling this story because I think it's important to note that according to Genesis, we humans have never been particularly good stewards of creation. It took about 5 pages to do such a bad job of stewarding creation that God wanted to give up on the whole plan. And God doesn't return to the earlier covenant either. He doesn't say, okay, you get another chance at this living in harmony thing because maybe your wickedness was just a fluke. God changes the arrangement. The animals are given the good sense to fear and dread those who are supposed to look out for them. So look, I'm not someone who thinks that this book represents literal truth, but I think there's truth in this story. And the truth that I hear is this: we can't go back to Eden. In our search for solutions to issues of climate change, it might not be helpful to imagine a return to simpler times where humans lived in harmony with creation. Our scale is greater, and our tools of destruction are more powerful, but humans have been living in defiance of nature, and nature has been living in dread of humans almost since we started out. And literal truth or mythology, the existence of these stories, seems to indicate that humans have had some self-recognition about our destructive tendencies for a long time as well. We can't go back to Eden. It's a disillusioning message. Luckily, in this story about God's disillusionment, God gives us a blueprint for how to move forward. New covenants and not giving up. New covenants. Like I said, we as a species are in a new age in terms of our scale and our technology. And with this new place in history, it's time for a new covenant with God, with each other, and with creation. And I think the Noahic covenant provides a fine template. It's universal and it's realistic. Most of the covenants in the Old Testament are with one tribe or family, but the creation covenants, both of them, are with everyone, with every living thing. So must our new covenant be, if it's going to be worth anything. This covenant cannot be individual alone. It cannot be for one community or even for one country. This new covenant cannot be about a church in Berkeley using less water when we brush our teeth or eating less beef. That's important, but it's not good enough. When it comes to protecting all of creation, we'll solve this problem together or not at all. Together or not at all. And the new covenant must be realistic about human nature, human needs, and human abilities, or else it's going to blow up in our faces about 5 pages in. As we and as our leaders seek to create new creation covenants, I pray that these new promises are rooted in realism, scientific realism, and political realism. The second theme for this new age: don't give up on creation. Climate change seems intractable. It is something so big and so scary that it's easy to get discouraged and just throw the whole damn thing out. Throw your hands in the air. Collective action, new covenants. It's so much easier to focus on something else, something concrete and fixable, to continue to work towards a goal as lofty as saving the earth. I encourage you to summon your godly perspective, that simultaneous ability to see how flawed humans are, how selfish we are, how unchanging we are. And then to still show up and keep rooting for humanity, to have faith that we might be worth believing in every now and then. Don't give up. This is really hard. It's hard for God too. At the end of Genesis 8, God says, "I've set my bow in the clouds, and it shall be a sign of the covenant between me and the earth. When I bring clouds over the earth, and the bow is seen in the clouds, I will remember my covenant, that the waters shall never again become a flood to destroy all flesh." I think I'd forgotten this somehow in my memory of the story. The rainbow isn't to remind humans about God's promise. It's to remind God not to give up on creation. So I think we need to find our rainbow. Find a sign that will remind you of humanity's profound responsibility to make a new covenant. Find a sign that will fill you with hope that we might keep this new promise. Amen.